Davion, we are going live. Where did my cursor go?
It's frozen.
Is it?
Yeah, it's frozen.
Alright. I knew that.
Yesterday felt like a whole week was like that.
Yes, it did. Here we go. Today is the 17th of October, and you're going to be proving lines parallel today. Alright, so you're going to be doing a couple different problems. And the first group of problems that you're going to be doing, the instructions are going to look like this. So, given the following information, determine which lines are parallel. And justify. And we'll talk about how you justify here in a minute. So, the next thing we want to get drawn is this diagram, and we got to get some angles labeled. So we need a couple parallel lines or parallel appearing lines on your paper. Alright, then we're going to label the two vertical lines A and B. And the horizontal lines L and M. And we got to number all these angles. And we're going to start right here with 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then a 5, 6, 7, and 8 to the right of that. And now we're just going clockwise around to these different groups of angles. And yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we went 9, 10, 11, and 12. Alright, so given the following information, determine which lines are parallel and justify. So the first piece of given information says that angle 2 is congruent to angle 8. Angle 2 congruent to angle 8. So the first thing you want to do is find and identify those angles. So angle 2 is right here. There's 2, and there's 8. Okay? If you can remember their relationship, in this case, 2 and 8 are alternate interior angles. They're on alternating sides of L. That makes L a transversal. Alright? And if alternate interior angles are congruent, then line A is parallel to line B. So that's the statement that you can make, or those are the lines that are parallel. So what we're going to say is that A is parallel to B. And we're going to justify that by the alternate interior angles theorem. Alright, so we can abbreviate that. We're going to say alternate interior angles theorem. That is your justification. Second piece of information, angle 3. 3 is congruent to 11. So if you identify 3 and 11, we'll go with orange here. We got 3 is right here and 11 is right there. Do you recognize the relationship between 3 and 11? They're in the same area, so we called that corresponding last week, right? So 3 and 11 are corresponding angles, which makes A the transversal. So that makes L parallel to M. And our justify is corresponding angles theorem. Is this making any sense? I hope a little bit. They give you the information. You identify the angles that are given and how they're related to each other.
That's it.
And then based on what you learned last week about those pairs of angles, you can determine what the transversal is and what lines are parallel. Alright, so it's a little bit of a review, but you do have to identify some angles. So we got 12 congruent to 14. 12 is congruent to 14. If 12 is congruent to 14, let's find those. Go with that green. 12, here's 12. And here's 14. 12 and 14. Alright, if you remember, those would be alternate exterior angles. Alright, alternate exterior angles. And both of those, their transversal is line M. So that means that A is parallel to B again. A is parallel to B. And we justify by alternate exterior angles theorem. Next piece of information is that, let's see here, 1. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 15. 1 is congruent to 15. Let's see, here's 1. 1 is congruent to 15. Now, those two angles are not related to the same line. Okay, angle 1 is related to either line A or line L, and angle 15 is related to line B or line M. And since they're not related to the same line, then you can't prove that any lines in this case are parallel. So this is just a none. If you're told that angle 8 plus angle 13 is equal to 180, angle 8 and angle 13, those are, here's your angle 8, here's your angle 13. Do you see how they're both related to line B? Alright, that makes line B a transversal. It makes angle 8 and 13 same side interiors, also consecutive interiors. And if consecutive interior angles are supplementary, then line L is parallel to line M. So that's the statement you can make here, is that L is parallel to M. And you justify by saying same side interior, or we're going to call it consecutive interior angles. Alright, and the last piece of information in this example, angle 8 is congruent to angle 6. Angle 8 is congruent to angle 6. So here we got angle 8 again, okay? And here's angle 6. Hopefully we recognize that those are vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent to each other. But what they're not is they're not alternate interior, they're not alternate exterior, they're not corresponding, and they're not same side interior. So if they're not any of those pairs of angles, then the fact that they're congruent to each other doesn't let us prove anything's parallel. Okay, so that's back to a none. Alright, so you'll have 5 or 6 problems on your assignment today that look just like that. Identify the angles, find the transversal, apply the rule. Alright, next example we're going to do is on page 209, up towards the top. It says standard test example 2. And here are the directions. Find the measure of angle MRQ so that A is parallel to B, period. Find the measure of angle MRQ so that A is parallel to B. And here's the diagram that you're given. And here's some of the information that you're given. Let's see, we got this is line A, this is line B, this is point M, point R, point Q, and this angle in here is 5x plus 7. And this angle is 7x minus 21. Alright, you're asked to find the measure of MRQ so that A is parallel to B. Alright, if you want line A to be parallel to line B, and you're given these two expressions, the two expressions represent alternate interior angles. And if A is parallel to B, alternate interior angles are congruent. So if you make your 5x plus 7 equal to the 7x minus 21, it'll allow you to solve for x. And if you solve for x in this situation and substitute, you can find the measure of angle MRQ. So if we solve for x first, we're going to subtract 5x, and 7 is equal to 2x minus 21. Add 21 to each side, and 28 equals 2x, and divide by 2. So 14 is equal to your x. So now if 14 is equal to x, that wasn't the question asked. The question asked was the measure of angle MRQ. And here's MRQ. If you go from M to R and then over to Q, it's that angle right there. It's the 5x plus 7. So MRQ is equal to 5 times the 14 plus 7. And 5 times 14 is 70, and 70 plus 7 is 77 degrees. So there's your measure of angle MRQ. So that A is parallel to B. Everybody all right with that? Any questions on it? Alrighty. Your assignment for today is on page, starts on page 210, 1 through 5, and then over on page 211, 16 through 20.